Okay, so I'm going to do a little tutorial on fireworks for those of you who maybe don't know how to use Photoshop, Illustrator, or just want to learn how to use fireworks. I find fireworks is a great program because it uses both a bitmap or raster graphic and a vector graphic, so you can also do web pages in this program. So it is a combination program that is used in web design. It also can be used in Flash. It's really a great program to learn how to use, and it's a really easy program to use for this project that you're going to be working on. So you're going to be drawing or designing your initial layout of a redesigned website. You need to find an online newspaper website that you feel needs to have an upgraded look. Don't pick something out that looks really nice and then you can't design your site. You're not going to copy the exact site that you're working on. You need to make a whole new face, a whole new look. So what you need to do is design the initial layout, and you can use this program, Fireworks, or you can use Photoshop or Illustrator, either one of those three programs. You can use the written content or advertisements from the original newspaper site. So what you're going to do is you're going to design your logo, and you can design your logo very easy in this program. It needs to be done as a vector graphic. I'll explain that in a minute if you don't know the difference between the two. You're going to design your buttons and all the graphic or images that you're going to use. So you want to create your mock-up. You're going to want to create it to look like the online newspaper that you're going to take this mock-up and you're going to actually transfer it into Dreamweaver. So let's just go through this program a little bit, and I'll explain as I'm going along how you can apply this into your program. So the very first thing you need to do is you need to open up this first image that I have here, image 1, my image of funky cows, and you go up to the windows and you make sure you have the toolbar open up, which is over here, your property panels, which is down here, your application bar, which is right here, your layers palette, which is over here, and your history palette, which is right here. And you might also want to open up your color palette. So you can just go down and just check all the different windows that you want to open up just by selecting them here. Okay? So let's just talk a little bit about your toolbar over here. If you take a look at the toolbar, up on the top, this whole section is your select tools. So you can select your image with the pointer right here. Let me just select this circle. And I can also, this is the sub-select tool, which I can use to select out my image, and it allows me to work on the image. Okay. And below that is your scale tool. Your scale tool is up in this section too, and this allows you to scale the image. If you hold the shift key down, it will stay constant. If you don't hold the shift key down, then you can just scale it out any way you want. So the next section is the bitmap section, which is for your images, your photographs, those kind of images that have millions of colors. So this is a bitmap. It's also called a raster graphic, and it's made up of a collection of pixels. It uses up a lot more memory than a vector graphic, and we'll explain that in a minute. It requires a lot of resolution, and your files for your bitmap images are very large. So this section down here, right here in the toolbar, is for the vector graphics. And you can see you have the line tool, the pen tool, we're going to go into in a minute. You have your shapes right here, your typography, all those different kinds of tools that are vector graphic type tools. You cannot use your bitmap tools on the back vector graphic. And the same thing with the vector graphic tools. You cannot use these tools on your bitmap image. So you have to use the correct tools for whatever image you're using. Now you notice that in the bitmap section you have a few tools here that you have in Photoshop if you ever use Photoshop. Not a whole lot of them, but you do have your select tool, and you have your your lasso tool, you have the paintbrush, and you notice anything that you select here changes automatically in your properties bar. If you it's kind of similar to Photoshop, except Photoshop uses an option bar at the top. Now after the vector section, you'll notice that there is a web graphic section right in here. This is where you can make slices on your image. We're not going to actually go into that because you're not going to be using these in this class. You're going to be creating your website in Driven using cascading style sheets and divs. So now if I go over here in my layers palette, you'll see that it automatically makes a web layer. You can't get rid of this layer. It just always comes out on your layers palette. So you just leave it alone. We're not going to do anything with it. Okay. Now if I look down here, you can see that this is my color section down here. So I can select my colors where the paint bucket is right here. And I can select my colors there. And I can select my strokes over here. And now if I have the image selected out, I can change the colors. So we're going to go into this in the next section a little bit more in detail. And down here is your view section. You can change how you're going to view this. I'm not going to change this because it will change everything I have on my file here. You also have your magnifying glass. If I select it, the option tool, I can make it bigger, smaller. If I hold the option or alt 2, I can make it smaller. If I select it, I can make it larger. And you have the hand tool that you can move it around. This image is already in full size, so I can't actually move it around. Let's talk a little bit about your layers panel over here. I have 3 layers. I can move my layers around if I select them. I put the text in behind. It's just similar to your layers in Photoshop. I'm going to move this back up in front. Wherever your layers are is how they're going to appear on your page. Okay. And I can make another layer. I can just go right down here, select right here, make another layer. Or I can trash my layer by selecting the trash can. You select the layer first, and then you just select the trash can, and it'll get rid of your layer. I can lock my layer so that it can't be moved right in here. Unlock it. I can turn it off. Turn it back on. You have like a little eye right here that turns your layers on and off. So if you've ever used Photoshop, it's very similar to Photoshop, your layers panel. Okay, your history states are a little different in this program. You have to actually scroll up for your history states to get to, I can scroll all the way up to the top, and then it will be exactly the way it was when I first started with the image. Now, one thing I want to say about the history palette is that if I want to have a lot of histories, I have to actually go on a Mac. You have to go to Fireworks and then select Preferences to open up this dialog box. If you're using a PC, you just go to Edit and scroll all the way down until you find Preferences. So what you want to do is you want to open up the Preference panel. When you open up the Preference panel, I just set the undos to 100. I find 100 is more than enough. There's other things you can do. You can set your brushes. You can set the colors for your guides. You can set your text. You can do imports for Photoshop. So you can do a lot of different things in your Preference panel. So I'm just going to cancel this because I'm going to keep it exactly the way it is. So now with the vector image I have here, so we have this bitmap image, and with the vector image is made up of, it's composed of points, and it uses Bezier curves. So you actually use this handles to determine the direction of the shape. With a vector graphic, it uses up a lot less memory than a raster graphic. and it requires very little resolution. Your files are very small. So you need to make your logo as a vector graphic, not as a bitmap graphic, so that this image can be blown up any size you want and it does not lose image quality. So if you give your client a logo that you create in Photoshop, they cannot take that logo and make it large, because this is what's going to happen. Since it's made up of pixels, when the image is blown up, it pixelates, just like this. Now, if I was to scroll over, I grab my my handle, and you can see all the pixels that are in that image, and then I scroll over to my vector graphic. You don't see anything, because it is made up of composed of points and Bezier curves. So let me just bring this back down again by choosing the Alt or the Option key. Now if I select this text here, which I haven't selected already, and I go up to text and I convert to paths, it'll actually allow me to work on this text. I'm going to bring it up so you can see it. I can use the select tool and select each one of these letters out. So you can use text, you can use typography to create your logo, and just go ahead and work on it and alter the shape, but depending upon what you're doing for your online newspaper. But you need to make a unique logo, something that is different than what is already being utilized for the online newspaper. You pretend that your client gave you this project and he wants a complete facelift. That means a new logo, everything. So you need to understand that you have to work on this week. I know there's a lot of work to do for the very first week, but let's try to do the best job you can. Okay? So now I'm going to close this image. I'm just going to go to the next image, image 2. I'm just going to go through some things for you in this program so you'll have a better understanding of how to work with this program. Now these are just 3 basic shapes. You know, we have the rectangle, the circle, and the polygon right here. So if I move each one, you will notice that there is nothing in the center. I'm going to go back to the layers panel. So I'm going to just put a little color in each one of these. I can select over here in the fill section and select the color. I can select each one of these. You have to select them first and then go through and put a color in. Doesn't matter what color you put in. Okay, so each one of them has a color. You'll notice that if I go over to the layers panel and I move them, that you can see how the layers are stacked like sheets of paper. So whatever's on the top in your layers panel is going to be your top image. You just bring it down and just kind of play around with it a little bit. Try to get used to the program. So this is the stroke. Right here, I can also change the color of my stroke. Okay, I can decrease the size. If you go down to your properties panel, you can see that you can decrease the size here, increase it, and decrease it. Play around with it a little bit. Some other things you can do is if I select this rectangle, for example, I can put a texture in it by selecting over here. You can just choose any one of these textures, and you can also increase the size of the texture. Make it more opaque, less opaque. Play around with that too. There's some that are pretty neat, like checkerboards, pretty interesting. So you can have fun with this, just kind of play around with this and just get used to the program, what you can do and what you can't do. And you'll notice that anything that you select in your toolbar changes in your panel down here. Okay? So just kind of play around with this. Again, if you select your image, you can scale it using the scale tool right here. So I'm going to actually make a new file. So just go File, New, and it opens up a dialog box. So you notice that everything opens up in pixels, and that is because we're working with a program that is primarily used for web design. So let's just put 72, and I'm going to make this width about 600, and I'm going to make the height I'm going to make it the same. I'll make it 600, and then hit OK. Okay, so now I have a new file here. I'm just going to play around with some of these different shapes. If I select over here, you'll see that there is, you can choose rectangle, ellipse, or polygon tool. Let's just try the polygon tool for a minute. And notice down here in the properties panel that it says shape. I selected polygon. I can click right here and actually make it a star instead of a polygon. And I can change the sides, the angle. So let's just hold your mouse down and make your star. Okay, because we had already put the color in it from before. I can change that. I can change my stroke. Okay, now if I want to redo this and do another star, I have to actually go back and select the polygon tool again. Deselect first. I'd have to deselect. Select the polygon tool again to get this to change. And then we can maybe put less size. Let's just put 5 sides. Okay. And then if you want to change it and put on another shape, you have to keep doing it. You have to keep changing it here. Now let's take a look and see what other shapes are here. If there's some special condition type shapes, let me just select the arrow here to show you. And I'm going to change the color. I can change the color in here too, just so that you can see it better. And bring this down a little bit. So you notice that there's little diamonds that pop up on this arrow here. If I select the select tool, I can actually select these out and change my the appearance of this arrow by moving this around. If I select down here, you can select on each one of these. You can bring this in and make this rounded edge. You can make it bigger. You can really change the appearance of this arrow. I'm just going to delete this for a minute. Let's try some others. There's a bunch of them. You might want to play around with some of them. Actually, there's a star that does the same thing. I like the donut one. It's kind of fun. This donut one, I can select it out. You need to use the select tool. And I can actually make it into quarters. You can alter the size of the center section here. You can make it into a pie. You can make some pretty interesting shapes by working on this. So you can play around with all the different ones here and that are here. There's a spiral, there's a star, the spiral. You can play around with that. When you select this tool, you can make it bigger, smaller, less spirals, rotate. So each one of these is just a little different. Now you can also go to Windows and select Auto Shapes. Windows and go down to Auto Shapes. That you have right here. And you also have other shapes that you can work on. You just take the box out and use the select tool, and you can change the appearance of the box, make it 3D. Each one of these is a little different. You just have to kind of play around with it. This one uses the center area to rotate your image. The clock is pretty fun. If you select it, you can name it, put a name in it. If you select over here, it will change to your seconds and minutes here. You can turn the clock here, turn the handles. You could even change the color of it. Some other ones that you can play around with, you can look at, there's actually a posable person that you can play around with. So play around with some of these different shapes so that you can get used to using them. You know, it's some interesting effects that you can create this in this program, and with working with all these different types of shapes. So next thing I'm going to do is just show you how to combine some shapes. I'm going to go to this image. It's always good to know how to do this when you're working in all these different kinds of programs. You can do this in Illustrator too. I'm just going to bring these up, how to combine paths. Combining paths is pretty easy. If I select these first two here, you notice that these are vector graphics. If I select them and I use the sub-select tool, I can alter their shapes, okay? As you see, the handles will pop up for me, and I can work on this image and alter the shape. I'm going to get into this a little more when I talk about the pen tool. Now, if I'm just going to go up and select my history, and I'm going to bring it right back to where it was, right in the beginning. So now I'm going to select these two images, and I'm going to go up to Modify, and I'm going to select Combine Paths, and I'm going to select Join. So when I do this, it actually combines the two images, and it punches out the center. Now it takes on the image color that's in the background. So let me just go, I'm just going to go back into the history, and I'm going to just hit Edit, Undo, Join. Now if I bring this image to the front, I can do Modify, and I will just do Arrange and bring to the front. And then I select these two images, and I go back to Modify, Combine Paths, and Join is going to take on the black. Okay, because the black image was in the background. Now if I do the next two images and I union them, let's see what happens. So the red image is in the background, so let's see what happens. Modify, Combine Paths, and Union. So they combine together. Now you see how you can make some pretty interesting images. Just combining different paths. You can still go back and work on this image and even change it further by selecting out the points. To select out the points, all you have to do is just select them with the sub-select tool. I'm going to combine these two images. I'm going to combine them. I'm going to intersect them. I'm going to go to Modify, and I'm going to do Combine Paths, and I'm going to intersect. And see what happens. It actually intersects the two images. It brings them together, and it cuts everything else out. So if you're going to do the punch, we already probably figured out what this is going to do. Let's Modify, Combine Paths, and Punch. Now you see it's not really anything too great when you're just using a circle and you come and taking a circle off. But if you use some other type of vector image, it has to be a vector image, and you put it on top of this image and you punch it out, it could create some special, pretty interesting effects. So this last one, we're going to crop it. So let's see what happens when we do this one. So we go to Modify, Combine Paths, and Crop, and it actually crops out the outside of the image. I'm going to make a new file real quick here, File, New, and I'm going to set this at 72 resolution for web design. I'm going to make this 600 again by 600, and I'm going to hit OK. So now I have a new file. We'll talk a little bit about going back to this option panel, going back to your tool panel here. If I go down to the vector selection, right here is the pen tool. Okay, so I'm going to just draw, I'm going to put some color actually in, and I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can actually see it. Okay, so I'm just going to click, double click. Okay, so I've made a little image here, but there is nothing, it's not closed. It's called open path. I don't know if I can fill it. Let's try to fill it. actually fill on this image, but you really can't work on this image because the image isn't closed. I can't combine it, I can't union it, I can't really do much of anything with this. Let's get rid of this image. Let's do this again. I'm going to select the pen tool again. Now if I want my points to be straight and I don't want any handles, I can just click, drag, and when you combine them, you actually see the little circle that shows up and it's telling you that this image is combined. I'm going to choose a different color so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, I can use my sub-select tool to alter this image, but you've noticed that there is no Bezier curve because I didn't make any curves. I can work on this image, but it's just going to be a basic straight image. I'm going to get rid of this for a minute. Now if I actually want to create curves that have Bezier curves, I have to make them. So I'm going to go back and select my pen tool. So you have to click and drag, let go, click, drag, let go, click, drag, let go, click, drag, let go, and then click and drag. And that's going to make your Bezier curves. You can work on this image and that you just created. Select it out by clicking on the point. Work on the handles. Alter your image to whatever you want to make it into. I give my students at the university a little penguin exercise to practice using the vector graphic. They have to make a logo, and they can only use vector graphics to make their logo for their web design, for their website, similar to what you guys are doing. So it takes a little work to work on this program and get used to using the vector tools. If you go underneath this, you'll see that there's the vector toolpath, which is just a basic drawing tool. You can do this if you feel more comfortable, but I find that it's actually makes a lot of points, and the more points you have, again, the larger your image is going to be. And I think it's harder to join your image together when you use that tool. So I really prefer just to use the pen tool. But everybody likes, when you first are learning how to use these tools, using the pen tool can be a little difficult. But it's good to practice using it if you've never used it before. So this is it for the end of this section. I'm just going to do one more thing here with you guys, just to give you a little information on this program. I'm going to just work on this little image here and do some customizing strokes and fills and show you how you can do gradients too. So if I select this image and you go down to the scale tool, we talked about this before, I can hold the shift key down and make this image bigger or smaller. And I'm just going to go back to the select tool and deselect. I'm going to put in by selecting color, I'm just going to select it down there. And to put a stroke in, I just have to select it there. Choose a color, choose your stroke size, whatever size you may want. I think I may choose a better color than this. Maybe I'll choose red, or maybe I'll put this into a light blue or something. I think that's going to look pretty funky. Okay, so now we can go and actually put a gradient in on this. So let me just scroll down here. If I select here, you can see right in here, if I select right there, it's a gradient. If you missed it, it's right here, right down in here, in this section right here. You can also just deselect, you can also select it down here in the properties panel. You see right here, that's your gradient. Okay, you can choose your colors when this little box opens up in these little triangles. You can choose your colors over here. You can change your colors. If I select along the path here, along this path here, I can add colors. and I select inside the triangle. Okay, I can move it right here, and that will move the colors in my image. I can change my gradient. I have linear. I can make it circle, rectangle. You do whatever you want to, but when you do that, you notice that there's handles here. You can alter the shape of your gradient with the handles. You can actually make some pretty interesting images this way. And play around. You just have to select them and pull them. I can go back to just select this section right here for the gradient. It'll open up your gradient box. Do something else. Do the starburst. And you'll notice again that you have control with the handles. Just select it. And you make some pretty funky images. And just by playing around with some of these different types of strokes. Each one of these programs that Adobe creates has a lot of different things that you can do with them. This program in particular is really a fun program for designing and using for web design. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually customize the stroke on this image. I'm going to just get rid of this color here. I'm just going to empty it out, just put nothing. If I go over here and just put nothing in it, then I can go back and put a color in. Okay, so I'm going to put a color in. I'm actually going to choose a lighter color than that. Let me choose a lighter color, green, so that you can see the stroke. I make my stroke a little bit bigger. I'm going to actually make a splatter. You can do special effects with your stroke too. So I'm going to select, if you select right here, I'm going to select DNA that I have selected here. And I'm going to select right here where it says edit stroke. And you see you can change the shape, the sensitivity. You have your options here. If I select over here, I can increase or decrease it. Okay, so I'm going to just increase my stroke so you can see this a little bit better. I'll make it a little bigger. Let me just put it up to 20. Okay. Now over here, next to the size where it says 1 pixel, whatever, you can select all different effects that you can put on your stroke. I'm going to select oil and just show you some interesting effect and select splatter. And you notice that your stroke actually looks like it's splattered. I can decrease it or increase it. Whatever I select over here. You can change your texture. Put DNA. So you can play around with this and do all kinds of effects. When I go over here, I can also select stroke options and I can change my splatter. I can change the different things that I want here. Try different ones and just see what it looks like. You can change the size. So you can play around with this and create all different kinds of special effects and different kinds of for your strokes and all different kinds of things. So I'm going to end this here for now. And then I'm going to do another tutorial, and we're going to go into a little more depth in Fireworks and how you can work on optimizing your images in this program. It's a pretty nice program to help you do all different kinds of things related to web design. So I'm going to stop this. I hope this helps you to understand how to use the program.